Said something in passing that's very important that I think we have to explain, elaborate for the audience, especially the foreign audience. You talked about commercial banking and you talked about investment banking. These were two different worlds until the Glass-Steagall Act was separated. The commercial banking industry was sort of a staid industry, not very highly remunerated. It's largely most of its credit went to real estate, some consumer credit, to corporate credit, collateralized by their capital investment. But alongside of these, where all the action was, the commercial banks didn't have much to do with the stock market. That was the investment banks. The 1980s was the decade of Drexel Burnham, of corporate takeovers. Before Drexel Burnham and its law firm, Skadden Arps, companies, the banks would not lend money for corporate takeovers. That was considered ungentlemanly. And the white shoe law firms, as they were called, would not do that. It was Drexel Burnham that got together a group of, I don't want to get into the argument over Zionism, but it was known as the Zionist the Jewish Investment Bank, of fellow Zionists who all wanted to get together. By the way, they were my main. I addressed their annual meeting on a number of occasions. My friends at Drexel helped promote my career. We were all very friendly at the time, and I knew them, and they were very open. You know, the commercial banks don't lend money for takeovers. That's for us to do. We will gather the savings of individuals, and it's not going to be a bank credit initially. We're going to put our own money in and make these enormous corporate raids. And that was what the leveraged buyouts were all about. Junk bonds were created by the investment banking community, not by the commercial banking community. And as the power of the investment banking community grew and was able to create bubbles, the commercial banks found them more and more creditworthy to lend money to. What they had, but they weren't really allowed to do this business themselves. That's where Bill Clinton came in and abolished Glass-Steagall, and the commercial banks that had been fairly staid before all this were turned into investment banks with the whole mentality. And instead of banks financing construction, real estate, and tangible capital investment, they were all of a sudden became absorbed into this investment bank financialized economy centered on the stock market, creating money in the form of capital gains for industrial companies that were bought out with high interest junk bonds that they paid the investors by carving up the companies, carve ups and breakups, and that all of that was the legacy of this whole idea that finance should be independent from the economy, even giving it the power to carve up the economy, deindustrialize it, destroy it, and do what is left in shreds today. All of this was the result of this Ayn Rand philosophy that all government regulation is awful. Let free enterprise and free markets be unregulated. Well, we're seeing the results today, and we're seeing what most people that I know on Wall Street think is a huge stock market bubble about to crash, as we're seeing the results of the oil crisis spread throughout the world, including the U.S. economy itself.